Hi, this is Pavel and Stepan from iBookBinding, and we like to talk to each other so much that we decided to bring a new format to our YouTube channel, and we will try to share with you our experiences of different museums, different exhibitions, different bookish locations, and objects and books themselves, and to share with you some images and our thoughts on the matter. So, hi, Pavel. Nice to see you this evening.
Again.
For today's topic, Pavel is the main engine for our information and visual materials. So I will pass the word to him.
Thanks. So recently we talked to Mark Cochrane, a wonderful book artist from London. And when he was showing us his studio, he was showing all sorts of things, including one small, funny book. It was shaped like a bookworm, and it had holes from a worm, so it had worm holes all through it, and they were especially cut all through the pages. And when I saw that, I thought, what a peculiar thing to do, to cut a hole into a book. And then after we finished recording, this image stuck in my mind, and I realized that I've seen something like that before. So to show you what it reminded me of, I went where else but to the library. To be more precise, to the biggest library in Moscow, the fourth biggest in the world, which is still called Lenin's library by most Muscovites. And in particular, I went to this building, one of the poshest buildings in Moscow. It's literally 100 meters from the Kremlin and overlooking the Kremlin. As you can see, the photograph is a bit dated, but the building basically looks the same as it did 100 years ago, or for that matter, 200 years ago. It's very, very impressive library or not. It was built by a wine merchant at the time of Catherine the Great. They knew how to live. And by 1860s, it became the building where the very first public library and the very first public museum in Moscow and all of Russia started. And nowadays, it's part of Lenin's library, where you can see all the oldest...
I'd say that its proper name is not Lenin's library. It's
Russian State Library.
Russian State Library. Yeah. So, just not to confuse people. That.
Okay.
But I'm sure that in Russia and the ex-Soviet Union there are still enough libraries that are that bear Lenin's name. So yeah, just not the main library.
I'm surprised it doesn't stand on Lenin Street, because those abound too. Yeah, so it's the part of the library where you can see all the oldest and most precious manuscripts and all printed books. It's a very precious place. So, as I said, it was first opened in 1861. And when it was 50 years after the museum was opened, an antiquarian society, of admirers of the ancient writings, you could translate its name from Russian to English, basically an appreciation society for ancient manuscripts, founded by barons and princes and whatnot. They were publishing facsimile editions of ancient Russian manuscripts for decades by that time. And they decided to celebrate 50 years of the first public library by publishing the most exquisite copy of an ancient book they could think of. And they chose this book. This book is known as the Arkhangelsk Gospel, named after a city in the north of European part of Russia. It wasn't written there back when it was written. There was no Russians so far to the north. It was written at the end of the 11th century, 1092 to be precise. It's the fourth oldest Russian language book in existence. It was brought in 1870s by peasants to Moscow and shown to a local bigwig who was duly impressed and bought it for a substantial sum, and later on sold it for an even more substantial sum to the Romantic Museum, to the library in this building. It cost all of 700 rubles. To put it in perspective, that would be something like $20,000 in today's money. A substantial sum now, but even more substantial sum back then. You could buy a Da Vinci, a minor Da Vinci, but you could buy a Da Vinci for that kind of money. So they didn't want just to reproduce the text, not just to print photographs of the pages, as you mostly do now, and as you often did then for the very best of editions. Photographs weren't around for that long by that time, but they were already used for this. But they also decided to reproduce the outward appearance of the book as an object. Here's a couple more photographs. On the left, the black and white one is the original, while on the right is the copy they published. You can see it's not the original, only if you look closely at the pages. These are clearly not vellum. These are made of paper. But other than that, this is very, very impressive. So much so that when you search Arkhangelsk Gospel in Russian internet, you can only find black and white and very, very dingy photos of the original.
The original, yeah. Everybody prefers to share the copies photos.
Basically, the copy is easier to get to, and it's good enough. Most of us couldn't possibly tell.
Yeah.
I got to the library, and after a few very colorful old ladies talked to me and asked me why would I want such a thing. They didn't even call it facsimile. For them, it's a mock-up. They were very, very disparaging about this book. It's pretending to be something it is not.
Yeah.
Okay, one of them was...
I should say that nowadays, 100 years later, after this facsimile was made, it has a lot of value on its own. So yeah, it's
yeah. I've seen it once or twice before in antiquarian bookshops, and it costs upward of $1,500 at the very least. It's not that rare. I found a few dozen in public libraries all around Russia, and you can find it being sold online. So if you're into old books, that would be a great present. I'm into old books, so if anyone has extra cash on their hands, I can provide you my mailing address. But anyway, even back when it was published, it cost around $1,000 in modern money. So something like 100 golden rubles, which is an absurd amount of money. In the biggest encyclopedia of the time, books of this publisher, of this society, are written very, very tenderly, but a bit critically. It says something like, Regals and the front. They say something like, it's so expensive that you almost certainly couldn't possibly buy it. Some things never changed, but then what would you expect from counts and barons who are publishing this kind of thing? It's really hard to say if the original book binding is as old as the book itself. As you can see, it's very basic. Bindings like that were made in late Middle Ages, bindings like that were produced in 14th and 15th century, and even in 19th century. I'm not sure from technical point of view is how classic this work is. Maybe you could comment on that.
Well, I'd say that it has a lot of medieval elements, but
to me, it looks very basic and a quick job. Let me show you this detail. This is very charming. I mean, it looks like that on the original, and they copied even the length of rope and the untied ends of the rope. This looks to me like a replacement binding for something much more impressive that was lost over time. Maybe it's not 11th century, but maybe it is. Who knows?
Well, this type of cord of attachment was used for many types of medieval bindings, including Gothic binding or something like that. It may have been bound a bit better when it was first made, but I wouldn't say that it's something out of ordinary to see something like that.
Then again, they would spend an improper amount of money to produce the original, right? It's a book written on vellum with illustrations.
I'm not sure that money really applies here, because probably a lot of work was done by owned peasants who worked in a monastery or something like that, and owned educated peasants or monks who may have been also owned by the monastery or something like that. So, yeah. I'm not sure about monetary value of this work, but yeah.
It does the job. It holds the leaves together. Okay, it works. And it lasted this long, so why not?
Yeah.
Now, here's another detail. They didn't just copy the binding. They copied the shape of pages. So where some parts were missing, like here, they cut it out in the copy too. But still, they reproduced the holes. Here there is a big hole, part missing on the page, and you can see it in the original on the left too. So the copy is very, very close.
And I should say that not always these missing parts are due to some damage that was made to the book. They could have been just the peculiarities of the vellum that was used to make the book, because vellum doesn't have rectangular shapes, and there are always places that could have been holes in vellum because of some damages to the hides of the animals, and of course
I've read that holes this size most often come from mosquito bites, which again reminds us just how expensive the material was.
Yeah, because it was used even with the imperfections. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, even for the best books.
Yeah.
And then finally they even reproduced the wormholes. I mean, look at that. Isn't this fun?
Okay.
So here it is, a book from 100 years ago, reproducing wormholes from 900 years further back into the past.
The wormholes may have been a later addition to the book. Yeah.
I don't know. This as an object looks almost artistic, a bit absurd, but there is something to it. And this is what Mark's little book reminded me of. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Pavel, for this tour. That's a fine example of both medieval binding and a modern true copy of a medieval binding. I'm just waiting to see what you will show us next time. And many thanks to all our supporters, our community. You can support iBookBinding on Patreon by joining the crowd, and you will get access to lots of books about books. or you can follow us on our social networks on YouTube. Please like and share our videos, visit our shop, and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.